Happy Wednesday, everybody, and thanks for checking into the TDR Trade Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Big show coming up here today. We got Dan Ahrens coming on to talk about this YOLO ETF that continues to perform really strong. Cardiol Therapeutics, a stock that continues to move. High Tide earnings tomorrow. So what can we anticipate as we ask him that? As well, cannabis lobbyist back to the podcast. Don Murphy, who gives us an update from Washington and what's developing as we inch closer to the federal election next November. Plus, we also ask him how Fox News continues to highlight this industry and how that's benefiting the industry. So let's welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell here on a happy Wednesday. Good to see you. How are things? Raining, I hear, sideways in southern Florida.
I've not seen the sun since about Sunday evening. It sucks. It's literally been raining all day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Still hot, I bet, though, yes?
I haven't been outside. It's been just raining all day. So the bad thing is apparently the Panthers jet is delayed, so they're not on their way to Edmonton yet. So I hope they would get moving quite quickly as the game's tomorrow.
So let's
not talk about sports. No, we're gonna sweep them. They're coming home with that cup.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, lots to dive into here today on a Wednesday. Always good to have lots of news pertaining to the industry, an industry that we love, but we welcome everybody into the TDR Trade Black podcast. And we begin with news involving the Cannabist Company holdings in the Virginia market. And on top of it's actually one of the top companies in the market. And it announced yesterday, it opened up its newest dispensary located in Richmond, Virginia. So with this latest announcement, it expands their footprint. So what are they at now when it comes to the amount of dispensaries within the state?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, they've officially opened their Richmond dispensary. This brings them up to 11 dispensaries in the state. They have 148,000 square feet of cultivation and manufacturing. And I'm pretty sure they are the most dominant player in Virginia. Which is a market that we talk about going to adult use maybe within the next year or two. I mean, we know Youngkin shot down and vetoed the bill. He didn't get a stadium. There was a lot
unpack
left there's definitely a lot to unpack there. And I mean, he's out, I think this year. He's not up for re-election, and hopefully the state of Virginia will have adult use cannabis soon. But I mean, Richmond's the third most populous state in Virginia. The Cannabist have their locations in prime areas in the state of Virginia. So, I mean, this opening in Richmond was great to see, and it just adds to their footprint that's growing in medical to adult use conversion markets.
Yeah, we've reached out to both David Hart, their CEO, and President Jesse Channon to talk about this. And as far as the longevity plan within the state of Virginia, because you make up a good point. Yes, there's no re-election coming up for Governor Youngkin. Curious to see how this market does basically materialize and grow over the next 12 to 18 months. But clearly, based on their strategy, this is an important market for this company.
Very much so. Very much so. Jesse has really highlighted the importance of this market to them. I mean, it's one of their, I would almost say it's kind of like their ace in the hole as it relates to their footprint, as they're dominant. It's a large market, and it should do very well come adult use.
Not a lot of competition right now in that market either, so you can understand why it's a viable one. So we'll keep people updated on that. And when we have David and Jesse on, hopefully within the next week, I think early next week is what we're trying to aim for. So we'll keep all of you posted. Into the wire here at a Wednesday afternoon of the TDR Trade Black podcast. Anthony Varrell, Shad Dales, good to have you. Next up, Houston, we have a mold problem, and it involves Holistic Industries, who was fined last month $200,000 after a mold breakout in one of their facilities in Massachusetts. But rather than fix the problem immediately, they elected to have permissive lab testing done that allowed the marijuana to pass inspection and be sold, which led to complaints for consumers. So, Anthony, I got to ask, were you surprised they elected to go this route and what it's turned into now?
I don't know if surprise would be the word. I mean, it's kind of just more so, it's damning for the sector. I mean, we have a lot of conversations about cannabis versus hemp. And I mean, a lot of the argument against the intoxicating hemp products is they're not tested, they're not regulated, they're not safe, and there's no real trust built in those. I mean, this erodes trust with the consumer when a company does this, especially when a company, I mean, it was a whistleblowing opportunity from their employees. It was also a watchdog group that called them out. From my understanding, they had a mold problem that was rampant in their grow stemming back to 2021. And instead of just killing the crop and taking the loss and doing the right thing, they went and basically shopped around to a testing facility that would allow that cannabis to pass muster and then get in the hands of consumers.
Yeah.
Apparently, if it was in the hands of consumers, the mold was still being able to be detected. The flower had a smell to it. And I mean, that's kind of what set everybody off and put this into motion. You hate to see it. They didn't they didn't accept or deny the allegations. They paid the $200,000 fine, and now they're on their way. This is also a pretty large privately held MSO. They're one of the dominant players in Pennsylvania. They're in 6 states total, and I mean, it just sucks that this has came to light. But I mean, hopefully they do better in the future. And I mean, this isn't a problem moving forward.
Takes you back to those original days of CanTrust up in Canada. Remember those?
Yeah, I mean, those hidden grow rooms that they found behind those laws. But I mean, this is probably the facet of an overarching issue with the traditional industry at large. I mean, the testing element of the industry has been questionable since its inception. I mean, there are labs that are pay for play. There are labs that will elevate the THC percentages. I mean, there's a lot of the unspoken secret of the cannabis industry is the testing element.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would hope to see more stringent testing regulations applied, and this is fixed in the future.
Yeah. Lots of comments coming in. Christopher Brady, appreciate the update. 16.94K public comments currently, should break 17,000 later today. So your 22,000 prediction is actually looking pretty good right now. So
yeah. Keep in mind, we got a ways to go. July 22nd is the end. So I mean,
you can't be over. Can't be over.
No.
So if it's
28.
No, I was brutal. I said 78,141. So good night. Good night.
Yeah, we're not getting there.
Yeah, that was a crazy story, though. One of the employees basically did the whistleblower, which actually in the end created a whistleblower hotline. So what a story, to say the least. All right, moving on into the wire, our third topic, and it's a big one, an encouraging one, diving into news involving Fox News and their interest towards the topic of cannabis. I bring that up because last month they reported a poll pertaining to the Yes on 3 initiative for adult use cannabis, where 66% of Floridians were in favor of legalizing adult use cannabis. And the latest has them outlining the benefits of medical marijuana with an emphasis on people 65 and older. So with that, I want to bring in actually both of our guests here today. Let's welcome in Chief Operating Officer of Advisor Shares, Dan Ahrens, here on a Wednesday, not a Monday, and cannabis lobbyist Don Murphy. Good to see you, gentlemen. How are things?
Things are good. It's good. And yeah. I'm happy to be on with Don too, although he is dressed like a professional and making me thinking I'm dressed like a punk today. I should be dressed like a professional.
I'm not gonna lie. I was looking in the background. He's got a shirt and tie, and I'm like, man, I got a hoodie and a hat on, but I kind of feel like I need to get the blazer on right now. Maybe I will once I ask you the first question and go off camera, Don. But good to see you. How's your summer been?
Summer's been fine. I'm trying to dispel the narrative. You know, you can't show up on Capitol Hill dressed like you guys, right? Yeah, you can do this, but you can't do it.
I was suit and tie when we were on the Hill.
You guys were looking like I didn't recognize you.
Yeah,
I was trying to look like a lobbyist out there.
Don, are you suggesting that we need to do this consistently, whether we're in Washington or not? Because if that's the case, then we'll come buttoned up every show. You're the boss.
Well, content is more important, but appearances are sometimes everything, right? In this business.
Aren't they?
That's just the fact of the matter. So
yep, that's right. Well, listen, annual congressional baseball game going on tonight at Nationals Park between the Republicans and Democrats. Should be an interesting ball game to say the least. Any predictions on who might be the MVP?
I tell you what, Senator Schmidt is really online on social media. He's doing the batting practice, and he is uploading a whole lot of tweets about it. So he better put up, or he's going to hear about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
For sure, so.
Well, listen, I wanted to have you on and Dan on as well, just to get some feedback and some insight too. But I want to dive into this Fox News industry. So, you know, I don't want to ask whether or not you're surprised at them going this route, because needless to say, it's a popular one amongst their viewers. But how, in a lot of ways, do you think by them continue to bring this up is helping the overall industry? Do you think it is?
Well, first of all, they can't avoid it. It's news. Yeah. It's happening. It's Schedule 3. It's things that most of their primetime lineup, in fact, all their primetime lineup, have avoided. I've talked to Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters about this, and they're just terrible. It's inconsistent at best. And Tucker Carlson was bad on this as well. So I've talked to all those guys, but Brett Baer, fair, balanced, and unafraid, and he shared some unpopular truth with many of his viewers on the right side of the aisle, and certainly Republicans who watched the show in Congress, and maybe even the president as well, saw a very well-balanced story, two stories, in fact. I mean, we're talking about 7 minutes and 6 minutes of primetime news.
Yeah.
That was serious, and it was all good, and I'm sure Sam is just losing their collective minds over it. But it is what it is, and it was great to see.
Do you think this helps change the narrative with some of the people from Washington as they see this at all? Or are we reading too much into it?
I think it does. And I think the fact that they didn't have any Republican members of Congress push back on the president and Schedule 3 and all of this is testament to the fact that Republicans know. Look, they led off with 69-30 support for medical. In fact, that poll might have been actually adult use, if I remember, and medical was off the chart. So elected officials, especially around election time, they don't want to be on the wrong side of this. And the fact that Fox News is running these big stories, not just little 30-second deals. In fact, when the president moved marijuana from a 1 to a 3, I think it was 30 seconds on the news. It was certainly less than a minute. And this thing was for 7 and then 6 minutes, respectively. So it was very good to see.
Yeah, it was. And it was great to see, because I mean, I've seen Kevin Sabet and I've seen Luke both on Laura Ingraham and with Jesse Waters. And I was actually surprised on the 5. Judge Jeanine Pirro is actually very well educated on cannabis, both from an adult use and a medical perspective. And she just said it how it is. It's not going away. We need to regulate it. We need to capture the narrative, and we need to kind of take this away from, not take it away from the other side, but figure out how we can incorporate it in our messaging, because we're losing, and it is something that's polling insanely popular. Do you think we're going to see more of this within the conservative news media? I mean, as we get closer to the election, or do you not think this is election motivated? This is just cannabis is here, and it needs to be talked about in a more positive light than what we're previously doing.
I don't see how CNN in their debate in 2 weeks, I think it's 2 weeks from today or tomorrow, does not bring this up. This was a huge thing that
they have to.
That Biden did. And look, let's be honest. Hunter Biden could go to jail because he checked the box that says marijuana use, even in a legal state, is a violation of this law. And I actually had a conversation with a senator today. I said, and this was sort of a follow-up to what Thomas Massey said. He said, look, I think Hunter Biden probably should be in jail for other things, but not this. Like, this is nonsense.
True.
And there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of cannabis users, medical cannabis users, legitimate medical cannabis users who own firearms, who would be subject to the same penalties as Hunter Biden. So let's just be clear about this. So between Matt Gaetz, who said something as well on social media, and Tom Massey, those guys are right. And the rest of the Republicans are wrong. And quite honestly, Democrats are wrong too, because they don't want to touch this either.
You basically put the nail on the head right there when you talk about the Hunter Biden angle with this topic. But yeah, that's going to create a huge reaction if the conversation gets brought up, because that's calling it like it is, don't you think?
I think it has to open up the conversations.
How does it not?
Yeah. You wonder after this debate, to Anthony's point, yes, Fox is bringing this up, but if more and more networks start to bring this up more and more leading into the fall, I can't help but think it would, especially when you look at the response it's been, when you look back to the State of the Union address back in March, and some of the metrics that were reported on social media that pertain to that specific topic. But a step in the right direction. I love what Fox is doing right now to create some education on this industry, or at least to highlight some stuff that's going on pertaining to it.
Yeah, with all due respect to the other networks, and that's fine, but hearing it on Fox is not like seeing it on the other networks, right? The other networks,
different.
Their viewers tend to be. This was the equivalent in my book of Walter Cronkite throwing in the towel on the Vietnam War. Like that's what Brett Baer did in those 2 episodes.
So,
wow.
but Don, I mean, I know we all watched the segment. What did you think about the narrative that was being portrayed on the segment? Because from my point of view, it was heavily geared towards medical. It was heavily geared towards an alternative to pharma. And it was heavily geared to how this applies to the 65 and older community. I mean, that is a big part of the space, but that's not really a big part of the narrative. And it was about insurance coverage.
Yeah, that
whole
cannabis insurance thing, look, with all due respect to the folks who want that, I don't see that happening in the very near future, but I think it would be very interesting to use that population of seniors and patients to come up with some real good data and research. I mean, why not? I don't understand this notion that, look, for 30 or 40 years, there was a group of people who actually got cannabis sent to them, Earl Rosenthal's of the world. And I met him a number of times. The federal government never asked to do any research on those people to see what actually happened. So this is really, really good. But the fact that Fox News is running these stories elevates this topic to a place it's not really been before. Yeah. And that is huge news for us.
Yeah. Curious to see how this is going to go, because, when we were in Washington with you in April, the medical angle was definitely something that if there was any politicians that knew about the space, a lot of the conversation pertained to medical. And we all know medical is an important one, but adult use is where this industry is really going to go. How do people get around that when there's just so many people like in Washington that have a hard time even understanding about where the current nature of the industry is right now?
Well, the funny thing is, I like to say medical is so 1990s, and the Congress is so 30 years behind the time. But what will happen is the viewers, the voters, the elected officials will conflate the 2 issues, medical and adult use. And you can see what President Biden's doing right now. He's making some disingenuous statements about what this Schedule 3 will do, as opposed to what it won't do. He doesn't talk about what it won't do, but he's twisting the narrative so it suits his electoral needs right now. You know what? It's politics. We all get that, but that doesn't make it wrong.
Talking about distorting the narrative, I mean, I know we've talked about a lot about this offline. What the hell is DeSantis doing? With all due respect, I mean, I kind of have an idea of what he's doing from a political theater standpoint, but I mean, just the things that he's saying, I mean, they're not making a lot of sense. Like he quoted, and this is direct from today, I think you're going to see people, you will be able to bring 20 joints into an elementary school. Is that really going to be good for the state of Florida? Like the fact that these are his arguments, like no one's bringing a handle of vodka into an elementary school. Like no one's bringing a carton of cigarettes into an elementary school. And I mean, those are analogous legal substances. It seems like he's grasping at straws here, or whoever's feeding him his comments is just completely uneducated on the matter at hand.
Yeah. And this is very disappointing. It surprises me because I know what his previous record in Congress was. I had him A-rated. He voted for McClintock. He voted for Rohrabacher. He voted for these states' rights positions. Now, I get it. You can be states' rights all day long and then say, yeah, but I don't want my state to do it. But don't be disingenuous and crazy with your rhetoric. Things, do these things happen? Perhaps they do happen occasionally. It's rare. In fact, as I like to point out to Sam, when they raise this issue and there's some news story, I'm like, do you know why there's a news story about this? Because it's news. It doesn't happen every day. When there's a killing in Baltimore, it's in the D block. It doesn't lead the news. When there's a joint found or an edible found in a school, it's the A block because it's so rare. It's so like newsworthy, but it's not a regular occurrence. And the flip side is, what's the alternative? The alternative is the status quo, which is People get arrested, they have their lives ruined, they go to jail, they get prosecuted, they lose their jobs, they lose their livelihood, their student loans, all of that for what?
You know what, though? I just had an aha moment because last time you were on, you were basically saying leading into this election, safe banking is going to become very political. And in a lot of ways, this topic, this is a prime example of becoming very political. But the aha moment is that whether you agree or disagree, or they say in the media landscape, if you like or don't like a person, that's okay. But if you're not talking about them, that's when you're in trouble. So in a lot of ways, I think this is actually helpful for the industry because whether it's Fox, a high profile governor, the conversations are being had, and this is getting into mainstream news. So this clearly isn't going away. And the more and more people are up to date on this, the everyday person like the Anthonys of the world or Dans of the world that live in, in Florida realize what they want right now. And the stats show overwhelming support for this industry, right?
Right. And the other thing this does is it points out how the government has lied to us about cannabis all these years.
Yeah.
One of the patients on one of the shows here, the stories, I think it was the second segment, said she was on morphine for 10 years.
Yes.
Wow. And now she's replaced that with cannabis. And she didn't look annoyed, but if I was her, I'd be like, I want my 10 years back. Like, who lied to me and made me have morphine as opposed to, my dad was on morphine at the last few days of his life. I couldn't even bring my kids to visit him. He was so whacked out. It was horrible.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was alarming, which was that 30% of people 65 and up are on 5+ pharmaceuticals.
Wow.
Each. Like, that to me is astounding. That people are just being pumped full of drugs. And I mean, there were several. Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost seems
Florida who were in this, they were in this study and they said 80% of them got benefits.
Yeah.
And there was no downside.
It seems in the last 6 months that the word opioid crisis has really been pushed to the back. I haven't been hearing that narrative, that discussion.
It's a good
the
point.
fact that opioids are vastly overprescribed and we have a real trouble in this country. And then you dovetail that into fentanyl. That has been pushed to the back of the narrative, it seems.
That's
part of the reason is because the news media, with all due respect to you guys being in the media, the news media can only handle a few stories at a time. They can't talk about other things that aren't like hot right now in the news. The Hunter Biden thing in the news, which is tangential to this. So it's sort of, you can connect these dots.
Yeah.
But it's impossible to be talking about the opioid crisis, the fentanyl, without doing something about cannabis. Like, oh, cannabis is bad. No, but cannabis is an alternative to opioids. So, and it must be because Brett Baer said so. He's a trusted source to the people who for too long have been on the wrong side of this. And now they're coming around. You talk about your aha moment. If Brett Baer says it, there are a lot of people at home going, yeah,
I'm glad it was Brett, because there's a lot of 65 and ups in Central Florida that watch that show that are now going to probably get curious, find out what Amendment 3 is, find out what their options are in the state of Florida. And I mean, he's big time. Like, I was very happy to see that it was his show that was portraying this message. And it was unbiased.
Somebody put it in the comments here that Fox News is very heavily watched in Florida in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you know where else it's watched? In all of those Republican congressional offices.
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
2020 on Friday nights back in the 80s used to command 30 million in an audience on a Friday night. Think about that. And where we are now, as much as people aren't talking about these things, they are. It's just dispersed in so many different directions. You can't command one big audience in one particular platform. But I do think the conversation is going on. It's just, amongst so many different people. And you're like, where do you lean and, focus on? And I think we are that network, right, Don?
Yeah, well, yes. And the beauty here, the difference is, you're right. Everybody, though, had to be sitting around the TV at the same time. And quite honestly, I was one of those people back in the 80s.
For sure.
Is a 20-some-year-old. And I can remember thinking, wow, 2020, that's a long time. I'll be old. I'll really be like, no, that was 4 years ago, right?
With those numbers, though, those are massive numbers.
Yes,
and if you couldn't get everything done in the 6 o'clock news, your primetime show in the evenings at 8, 9 o'clock could. And you had all kinds of subsidiary programs related to that. So anyway, continue your thought.
Except the difference now is there aren't those kinds of shows where everybody watches at one time other than the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, but what you can do now is you take that 7-minute clip and you let it go viral. All your viewers start sharing it. They see it. Look, I happen to see it because I DVR'd it. I just DVR Brett Baer's show at 6 o'clock Eastern. And so I can watch it at my leisure. I came home. I think it was a 4-day weekend for me. So I was at the beach. I came home. I watched it and I turned to my wife. I said, holy crap.
Yeah.
I got to tweet this out. It was amazing to see.
Yeah.
And, you know, because it was Fox News and because that they're starting at 7 o'clock, their lineup is so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Don, I know we're talking about congressional offices. One thing that I definitely wanted to, I guess, get your take on, Dave Joyce. I mean, we know he's a big friend of the cannabis industry. I know that he put that language in this funding bill. I know it's kind of like safe banking light. I mean, what's your take on that? Like, does it have legs? Could it be a win for us in the light of safe? Would we still need safe on top of that? Or like, where is that sitting right now?
Well, I don't think having safe on top of that would be a problem. It's not like there'd be a conflict. The chances of it staying in there, we've had these sort of amendments before and they've not survived. But that was before Dave Joyce had the gavel. He is a subcommittee chair in appropriations where Republicans control, right? There should be some give and take here. And it doesn't matter, you know, what one side wants versus what the other side wants. There's going to be some horse trading.
Yeah.
And Democrats are going to want something. Republicans are going to want something. And they may look, honestly, they may look at safe banking and go, I don't have to give up anything for this. It's not that political. It doesn't, you know, it's not a win, but I don't care. I'm not going to fight it. So, you know, I still feel pretty good about the prospects for this happening before the end of this term. Okay. Which is basically December.
Lame duck session, you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
One can only hope. Interesting to see. Before I let you go, we got to reach out to Congressman Mast, get him on. I'd love to get him on based on a lot of the stuff that's manifested in Florida with Governor DeSantis. But do want to reach out and let our audience know that we're going to try and reach out. If we could maybe go through you, Don, to see if there's some opportunities through your connections, that would be great to have him on. Great person who we met actually 2 months ago. Big supporter of Jim McMahon and Ricky Williams' story as well. But you know, a veteran, to say the least, that probably understands the benefits or medical benefits for a lot of his community. And now that he's serving, obviously, his country, it'd be great to get his take on what he thinks this whole is. Anthony would put it, what the hell is DeSantis thinking you're doing right now? But hopefully we can get through to him. But listen, enjoy the ball game tonight. Let us know who wins. And good seeing you as always. And yeah, it's been too long. Let's keep these conversations going.
Come back soon.
All right. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
It's done.
Good guy, to say the least.
Best.
Yeah, like just interesting stuff, though. Like you brought up a good point there, Anthony, with regards to DeSantis, but a good take on a lot of that stuff. But, you know, like he said last time he was on, things are going to get very political leading into this election, and it's already starting to happen.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure DeSantis will have plenty of quotes from now until November on the cannabis space. That'll have us all scratching our heads.
Yeah. TDR Trade to Black podcast. Anthony Varrell, Shad Dales, and we're joined here with Dan Ahrens. It's MSO Wednesday this week. As he's
sounds weird,
but needless to say, nevertheless, it's good to have you on and good to see you. And I do want to highlight 9 days ago, we talked about your best performing ETF right now, YOLO on the year, continues to strive in that direction. You brought up your second biggest holding, Cardiol Therapeutics. This stock continues to perform strong since you're on. Fast forward 9 days here now and continues to head in the right direction. So I wanted to highlight that, to say the least. But we also have High Tide. What did it close today? Was it up again today?
Yeah. High Tide was up nicely today. Of course, they come out with earnings tomorrow after the close. But to get technical on you, in the fund YOLO, the largest holding is MSOS.
Okay.
And we actually look internally because MSOS has such a big chunk of GTI and then of Curaleaf. Those indirectly are the largest holdings in YOLO. But then right behind that is High Tide.
Yeah.
Right behind that is Village Farms. We don't talk enough about. Love that company. And
Great
then we have Cardiol. And Cardiol is not on anybody else's radar except mine, I don't think, maybe Anthony's. And it's the 4th largest holding in that fund, YOLO, and it's definitely adding some alpha to that fund. So,
what's it up on the year now from Jan 1? Isn't it up like 230 or 40%?
Ugh, I didn't have it ready in that format, but I can tell you in a hot second.
Like it's I've reached out to actually their CEO to see if we can somehow, some way get him on, but we'll keep people posted on whether
year to date, a mere 252%. Not bad.
52%.
Wow. Not bad at all.
Very strong. High Tide, their earnings coming up tomorrow. Anything you're going to be watching or listening to closely on that earnings call?
No, I think the world of those guys. I spent some good time, talking at the Canaccord conference, and we're looking to have them on some of our alpha nooners with the great Mackenzie. But
nice.
No, I think very highly of what High Tide does with retail in Canada. And there's been so much talk about, the Canadian companies. They overgrew. They got flooded with capital. They, burned through too much of it. And High Tide just kind of swooped in on the tail end of that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like something Ben Culver would say: head down and execute. That's kind of what High Tide did in a completely different market, without being flooded with capital like Canopy and Aurora and all those famous things were. So I like everything.
I think it's smart to be retail focused to an extent from a business perspective. Growing cannabis is hard. Manufacturing cannabis is hard. What's not that difficult to scale is retail. I mean, it's marketing, it's consumer acquisition, it's disciplined ops, and then it's a real estate game. It's a great business if you can figure it out. And I mean, Raj figured it out, and he doesn't have to deal with the BS of cultivation and being full vertical.
Exactly. They know where strength was, or a place to perform in the Canadian market. I think in the US, it's very important to be vertical. But,
100%.
It works great there.
Yeah, a week from today, actually, Anthony and I are actually going to be in Toronto, and we're going to be highlighting some of the dispensaries that High Tide and their Canna Cabana locations within that market. But obviously, a big footprint in the Western Canada. But now with the cap size, as I've said before a number of times on this podcast, growing from 75 to 150 in the province of Ontario, big upside potential for those that know how to perform and execute in the legal aspect. We're also going to be actually having an interview with the Attorney General of Ontario, Doug Downey, while we're there to talk about the legal market. So that'll be interesting to highlight some of those things. But
good stuff.
I know YOLO, what a fun. It continues to perform strong.
It needs more love. Everybody's so focused on MSOs, which we're not complaining about. It's in a very dominant position, many times the size of any competitor funds. But YOLO is a pretty good fund. Give it more love, people.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I mean, I know that we've kind of not lost track, but I mean, the conversation around stocks in general has kind of been muted the last couple of weeks. How's MSOS been looking in terms of inflows or creations? Or, activity with the fund?
Yeah, there was a real gap in getting more inflows, creations into that fund. I mean, we're in the summer months. We're in the middle of the 60-day comment period.
Yeah.
People are, just kind of grinding, I guess is a good way to say it. But I was happy to see a creation units on Monday this week. It's about close to $2.5 million. Most funds would give anything for $2.5 million, but for MSOs, it's kind of an average day. And but it was smooth as silk. There was no end of day volatility, nothing to speak of. We were able to allocate that creation unit from a market maker into about the top 12 holdings. And now we bought GTI, we bought Curaleaf, we bought Verana, we bought Cresco. We bought the whole top of the fund in percentage allocations, smooth as silk. So I'm looking to forward to some of those creation units starting back up again.
Yeah.
More.
Also wanted to highlight, it was announced today that the market of New York has reached the $200 million mark on the year. Sounds like a lot of money when you say $200 million, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money, especially when you're comparing to a state like Michigan, who does 275 in 1 month. Long ways to go. Just another beautiful story coming out of the state of New York related to cannabis, right?
But it's all upside. My glass is half full. It's all upside from the mess that is New York cannabis markets.
Yeah.
I guess that's a positive. New York can't really get worse.
No.
The only way it could get worse is if they just repealed their entire adult use program, which obviously isn't going to happen. But yes, they literally can't get much worse than it already is.
Yeah.
Heads have rolled. Illegal dispensaries have flourished. They're blaming their funding partner. Yeah, everything's gone awry. For the state of New York.
Yeah, it's not an easy fix still. So I mean, we've been talking about this for well over a year now. Oh, they're going to fix New York, and no, it's still a mess. There's too much damage. It's going to take a while, but not worse.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my buddies this morning, and I mean, it's probably a late second half 2026, 2027 story, maybe for New York to really get.
By then we'll have safe banking.
Correct. I mean, we should have everything. We should have all our cards aligned by.
We'll have lots of things
by then, hopefully.
Yeah.
John Varrell, who is CRDL, Cardiol Therapeutics, one of the holdings within the YOLO ETF. It's up 200. What'd you say? 30% on the year, that stock. But they 252. In a lot of ways, the early days were related to cannabis. They also pretty much are a biotech company that focuses a lot on heart disease.
Yes, they really are.
Yeah, maybe check them out online and find out more of their story. But I think they've had a lot of breakthrough information or research in recent last few months, which is why it's appealing and drawing a lot of interest amongst investors, to say the least.
True biotech, pharmaceutical, doing work, good work with cannabinoid and cannabinoid treatments.
Yeah.
It's always been kind of a sleeper holding inside of YOLO that I have liked. And now it is really showing up this calendar year. So, but it's always been in there for a long time.
Getting a lot of analyst coverage too. There's some pretty aggressive 12-month price projections. So, and I think that's probably drawing a lot of interest too. But I also want to bring up Ohio. This is going to go live at some point this month. Once it's, in some ways it already is, but once this is fully up and running, do you anticipate, the way Maryland, I don't want to compare because the two markets are complete opposites. There's a lot of comparisons with Ohio and Illinois, but similar to what we saw last year, July 1st, Maryland came out roaring out of the gate. Do you anticipate a lot of the same things in Ohio and how it's going to maybe draw some keen interest?
Yeah, different market, but there's a lot of similarities in, limited license state. A lot of the big MSOs have decent footprints there, and they're going to be able to allow to turn on, a lot like Maryland did, adult use for a lot of current licensees. And it's going to happen this month. And that leads me into another thought is we know that we are completely bogged down waiting for new money to get into this space. We're still trading OTC. We're not seeing big volumes and all of this. So we realize that. But at the same time, some of these Ohio sales might hit Q2 earnings. I mean, it'll be minimal, but they're really going to hit Q3 earnings.
That'd be interesting.
And the next round of earnings come out, I'm going to be looking very closely, not only to how much Ohio impacts, but how all the companies now are treating 280E, because that's always, Trulieve got really aggressive with that, and we applauded them. But a lot of the other companies, weren't taking advantage of 280E or yet. Now I think everybody should. And we're not actually for uplisting, for banking, for all this other stuff. We're waiting for Schedule 3 to actually get done, for the rules to actually get in place, for FinCEN to get actually rewritten, for all this stuff to actually happen. But for hitting earnings, these companies should not be paying 280E anymore in the next round of earnings. So I'm looking at Ohio, how quickly those ramp up when they hit earnings, and for how all the companies treat 280E. it's going to be interesting in my mind.
And unfortunately, really the only company we're going to be able to directly see the growth in Ohio is Verrell, because they're the only one that breaks it out on their earnings report.
Good point. Really good point.
Into the market specifics. Oh, I've got their number memorized. I've got their revenue numbers I've memorized. Yeah, because they're the only ones that we can actually get any sort of key learnings into these markets with how things are going.
Yeah,
quarter over quarter.
Christopher Brady writes, Shad's wife must keep it sub-freezing over there, judging from the garb. But I actually put on the jacket to be somewhat clean myself up for Mr. Murphy. I don't think this is really flowing, but I felt kind of bad showing up with a hoodie and hat on when Mr. Don Murphy came on. Always looking sharp dressed, that's for sure.
All right, we're all capable of dressing when the
So apparently Shad thought that, but Dan and I don't fucking care. Don't care at all. So
image is everything to me, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm just, I like having these conversations. It's almost like checking in just to see how things are developing and working. But you know, before we know it, Dan, we're gonna blink. And it's going to be, we're right back in the middle of everything, September, October. And
it's going to get interesting. Very interesting.
Very interesting. I did want to ask what Don, like he said it last time and continues to push that narrative where he seems to think safe banking passes during lame duck session. One can only hope. I don't know whether that happens. I know both of you are kind of nodding your head saying no.
Well, I appreciate the hell out of Don as one of the most in tune people in the world for that stuff. And he knows his stuff. But the question, more than if I actually believe him or think, does anybody really care at this point? No, we're waiting on rescheduling. No one wants to hear about safe banking. I think it's going to be awesome. Awesome if we actually get safe banking before the end of the year. It'll be great.
Yeah.
But no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to hear about it.
Dan, last September, we had the HHS recommendation. So if they officially rule that rescheduling is announced, the question for either one of you, do you think we start to see that rally again, the way this cannabis industry performs in the fall and letting into Q4, or if we get proper announcement, like, you know, rescheduling is official? You know, we've had some big news announcements the last couple months pertaining to it, and it's done nothing.
I'm in the camp of, yes, it could cause a nice pop, and that nice pop could be a lot stickier than the other ones that were a pop and then a drawdown. And the reason is when we get reminded of the outside world, outside investors, investment advisors, everybody that's not really, really in tune with cannabis, they keep hearing, oh, it's another proposal. Oh, this might happen. Oh, it's not official yet. If they say it's real, we really get the rescheduling and we're putting the laws in place, I think it can cause a pop, and that pop can be stickier this time.
Yeah.
I tend to agree, but I don't think we really move or see any sort of sustained rally until after November. If Biden wins and you get Florida passing on the ballot, I think we're going to start moving aggressively.
Yeah, and disagree.
Sustaining that.
The other question is when new money can really, really come in, because not just on news, there's still plenty of brokerage firms, plenty of banks that would like to invest, but physically cannot until rules change.
So is Kim Rivers sitting at home alone on election night, and then once the results come in, is she on like a private jet straight to Miami, and it's just going to be like celebration or what? Like, can you imagine being in her shoes come election night and the amount of attention that's going to draw? Like, it's going to be an epic night, one way or the other, right?
I mean, she pulled a 58% gross margin last quarter and blew it out of the water.
She got nothing really to worry about. Look, she's putting a lot of time and effort and raised a lot of money, but man, if she look, I applaud for everything that she's done already. Like, nothing more to be said with her, but man, this is just, you know, icing on the cake, to say the least, if it does indeed pass. But kudos to her.
I mean, she's marching towards, or not marching towards, she's running at $1 billion annualized run rate.
Yeah.
Great business. I mean, adult use is just finally reaching the goal that I'm assuming they wanted to attain when they started the company.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big celebration, but I mean, Florida's going to be a battleground once adult use happens. Like, there's going to be a ratcheting up in competition. to win a consumer and adult use market, not only from pricing, but from a quality perspective. So, I mean, I'd be willing to bet you're going to see the knives come out amongst all the big boys in Florida once adult use passes.
Robert Griffith. Yep. Yeah, Robert Griffiths. Love you, buddy. Come see me at the Cannabis, Brooklyn, 44 Court Street, only Friday and Saturday, 12 to 6. Now, though, closing down New York operations while the registered organizations continue to grow. Great management. Yes, good guy. Make sure you go down there and check him out. Lots of great comments here today. Dan, honestly, appreciate the time. Thanks for adjusting your schedule this week. We will see you back here on the podcast next Monday. In the meantime, no sports allowed, but I got to say this. Good luck tonight.
Yeah, Mark, by the way, we're going to cover New Hampshire on Friday after the vote. I know the vote's coming up tomorrow for their adult use framework. We're going to cover that on the Friday stream.
Think about that. 25th state. We're past the halfway point for adult use. That's pretty monumental.
Be nice. And then we'll also be talking about the Panthers win from.
We'll have more stuff to talk about next week. Sounds like
more.
Thanks,
sports.
Everybody.
More sports. Oh, boys.
More
See
sports.
You, Dan.
We can't talk about sports. No sports. Cut it, Ahrens.
No sports. All right. Smash that like button, people. Leave some comments below. Let us know what you think of today's podcast as well. Any questions you want us to reach out to Mr. Don Murphy or Dan, please let us know. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to our channel as well. Make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. The link's actually here in the comments section below. Or if you want to log on to thedalesreport.com, log on to, like I said, the website and subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Lots of great reports that we've announced this week. I've got the list here. Cureleaf, MariMed, Trulieve, Verano. We have Terracin coming out this week as well. New Lake Capital. I know there was a question about how can we get New Lake and Dan combined and get them on the YOLO ETF. Could New Lake register within the YOLO ETF, or would have to go within the MSOS ETF? Being in America, it could go
in any ETF. Dan saw fit.
All right, sir. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you Friday morning. We're reaching out to a few guests, so hopefully we can line up a few people that we have reached out to. But either way, we'll see you Friday morning at 11 a.m.
We'll see you Friday morning.
All right, take care.
See ya.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.